A lion said he actually wanted to go into the water to retrieve something. As he was walking home with Jucao on his back, suddenly he felt something in the river and wanted to take a look. Then I saw a pair of embroidered shoes floating by the river. Looking at this pair of embroidered shoes on the water's surface, they are new and beautiful. So he wanted to pull it up. Little did he know, as he reached out, that the embroidered shoe floated away into the deep water. And no matter how deep he goes, he's always just a bit short of reaching it. He only realized something was wrong when the water reached his chest. When I wanted to go back, I found my foot was being pulled by something. I can't get up no matter what. The herding uncle understood immediately. This must be the legendary water monkey enticing people. He wants to make you a substitute. From then on, I guess they will all stay far away from that river. There is another thing about this river. Every night, when someone passes by the riverbank, you can hear the sound of someone diving or splashing in the water. But everyone knows that there are water ghosts there. So no one dared to step forward. Hearing any noise, I would run away on 3 legs. It wasn't until later that the 2 fishing brothers from the village intervened to calm the situation. The 2 brothers were bold. He often fishes in the river all year round. So they hid in the weeds by the river under the cover of night, then stared at the ripples on the water's surface. Get everything ready, including the spinning net and the others. Sure enough, the surface of the water made a sound in the middle of the night, the sound of rushing water. One person threw the net towards the source of the sound. Unexpectedly, this net actually caught something, dead heavy. The 2 brothers worked together to slowly pull it up, and the things in the net are incredibly powerful. Flapping vigorously, the 2 brothers worked hard to drag the fishing net onto the shore. Little did they know inside the fish net was a clump of something dark, smelly, and foul. When they opened the fishing net to take a look, the 2 brothers were stunned. That dead fish was mistaken for a water monkey. However, what is even stranger is, since that fish was caught, the number of people who drowned in that place has indeed decreased quite a bit. Chapter 54, Seeing One's Own Soul. In ancient folklore, there is a saying, when a person is about to die, they can see their own soul. Today's story takes place with Lai Zhanping. That year, I was still in elementary school with Lai Zhanping and Liu Peng. Every day after school, I would go to a small pond by the village to play in the mud. The water in the pond is not deep. Everywhere the eyes can see, the bottom can be seen. So the adults don't mind us playing by the pond. We were having a great time that day. Suddenly, it started to rain heavily from the sky. So the 3 of us hurriedly returned home. The rain poured heavily. It didn't stop until the next morning. That day on the way to school, I was chatting with Liu Peng. Lai Zhanping suddenly walked over and said something strange. He said he got up this morning to go to the bathroom. Just as he was about to reach the bathroom door, then I saw the bathroom door suddenly open, and then a child walked out from inside. Lai Zhanping was momentarily stunned, because this child looks exactly like me, if I weren't aware of my parents' excellence. He really thought his parents secretly had another child behind his back. Just at that moment when Lai Zhanping was lost in thought, the child walked past him. Lai Zhanping was holding in his urine and didn't go after him. Let's go to the bathroom first. He carefully searched again after returning to the house. But I could never see that version of myself again. Lai Zhanping then told his parents about this matter, but mother felt that he hadn't woken up properly in the morning and was seeing things. So I didn't think about going anywhere else. It was just a reminder from Lai Zhanping before school. Let him not go play by the pond after school, because it rained all night. The pond must have risen. I suddenly became interested after listening to Lai Zhangping. He thought he might have physically woken up. The soul has not yet awakened. Then the soul left the body. Liu Peng laughed heartily after hearing that, jokingly saying that the soul might leave the body. Then it's not far from death, since Lai Zhangping and I are in the same class. So I made a special effort to observe during class. He was just a bit lethargic in the morning from not waking up fully. Everything else is normal. So it was after school. The three of us are gathered together to discuss where to go play later. At that moment, Auntie is walking towards me, holding a child. Just walked past us. Then the child suddenly began to cry. It seems I saw something scary. His gaze was clearly fixed on Lai Zhangping. We are all very curious about this. I don't understand why that child cried when he saw Lai Zhangping. Liu Peng said it might be because Lai Zhangping is too ugly. The child was scared and cried. Then we continued walking forward. A wild dog is searching for food in the garbage pile by the roadside. Suddenly turned around and bared its teeth at us. The hair on my body stood on end. But we all know this wild dog. Usually, I don't even have time to hide when I see someone. Today, however, it suddenly showed its teeth at us in an unusual manner. We also dare not provoke him. Just spread your legs and run forward. Ran for quite a while. We just stopped to catch our breath. At that time, we all felt that the wild dog was not actually targeting me and Liu Peng, but directed at Lai Zhangping. Lai Zhangping also felt very strange. Not only do children cry when they see him, even the wild dogs wanted to take a bite out of him. Once we recover, they have arrived at the edge of the pond. Just thought of playing at the pond for a while before going home. We chased them all the way to the edge of the pond. The small pond has turned into a big pond due to last night's heavy rain. Moreover, there are many decayed logs in the pond. I looked around and saw nothing interesting, so I decided to go somewhere else. But Lai Zhangping pointed at the water surface and said we could go rowing. That piece of wood must have been washed in by the heavy rain. There are a few big toads squatting above. Lai Zhangping found a long stick. The first one jumped onto the wooden plank. Then he pushed the wooden board into the pond with a stick. Hurry up and get on the boat. I just wanted to jump up. Suddenly, the large wooden board flipped over. Lai Zhangping and Liu Peng both fell into the water. I quickly shouted their names in fear. Fortunately, Liu Peng learned to swim from his father since he was young. Suddenly popped up from the water. After I pulled him to the shore, but found that Lai Zhangping had not come out of the water. Later, we found Lai Zhangping's family searching around the pond. It's strange that we can't find Lai Zhangping anywhere. The piece of wood that Lai Zhangping used for the boat was also pulled ashore. After identification, it was discovered that it was actually a coffin lid. Because it cannot be salvaged, Lai Zhangping's father brought over a few water pumps, preparing to drain the water from the pond. At that time, a total of 4 pumps were used. I smoked the entire night. The next day, after draining the water, we still haven't found Lai Zhangping's trace. Only the whole floor didn't know when a large coffin appeared. Everyone felt it was a bit strange. So everyone gathered by the coffin. As the coffin was turned over, everyone present was too shocked to speak, because Lai Zhangping is truly under the coffin. Strangely enough, he was tightly held by a wreckage, but no one could clearly say whose remains were in the coffin. Later, to prevent similar incidents from happening again, the villagers filled the pond with garbage. Episode 55, a bit touching. Have you ever seen such a kind water ghost? In the late night, a woman accidentally fell into the water. The water ghost not only didn't pull her in as a substitute ghost, silently helping the woman ashore. Even the black and white impermanents were moved to invite her for a drink. Such a touching story. Everyone quickly loves Ernie's unfortunate friend, or give a thumbs up to leave a dog head for protection. On this day, 3 mischievous kids sneaked away from their parents to play by the river, while 2 of them were playing joyfully by the shore. Suddenly, a mischievous child named Lai Zhongbing, it seemed as if something was drawing me in, started walking continuously towards the river's surface. The other 2 children noticed something was off with him. She hurriedly ran forward to try to stop him. But Lai Zhongbing said there is a big fish in the river. He wants to go down to catch fish, because at this moment in his eyes, a large carp over a foot long is floating on the river surface. But the 2 children next to him saw nothing. But Lai Zhongbing was acting as if he had gone mad. After forcefully shaking off the 2 children, just jumped straight into the river. He suddenly stopped when he could run to the waist of the water's surface, because that big carp has already disappeared. There's nothing in the river. At that moment, the 2 children caught up, hurry and drag him back to the shore. After the 3 mischievous kids left, that big carp appeared again. He transformed into the appearance of a water ghost at the shore again, then climbed ashore and sat on a rock. The expression showed a hint of disappointment and regret. At that moment, someone walked up from behind him, interrupting his emotions. It turns out this person is Hei Wuchang from the black and white impermanence. But it was clear that they were very familiar with each other. After setting up the food and drinks, the 2 began to indulge in technology and quench their thirst. Hei Wuchang's drinking capacity is clearly not up to par. After a few bottles of wine, my tongue just won't stop. Then he began to blame the water ghost for missing several chances to catch a substitute. Even Lai Zhongbing, who saw the big carp, should have drowned. Every time an opportunity is missed, he has to wait in that cold river for another 3 years. Being a water ghost is not as easy as it seems. At that moment, Hei Wuchang revealed a piece of news to him while he was in a daze. In 3 days, a woman will fall into the water from that bridge and drown. This move is clearly meant to help him out. Sure enough, 3 days later, heavy rain started to fall from the sky. A woman in a large raincoat was about to cross the river. He seemed tense, as if he had just argued with his family. But due to the accumulation of rainwater and the growth of moss on the small bridge, despite the woman walking very carefully. But then, slipping unexpectedly, they fell into the river with a splash. Unbeknownst to them, the messengers of death had long been waiting nearby. Hei Wuchang was somewhat happy for his friend, who was about to be liberated from danger. Feeling a bit uneasy, he sensed that things might not develop as he had hoped. Indeed, the woman finally made it to the shore. The hands reaching out from the river were not pulling him down into the water, but pushed him onto the shore. Hei Wuchang knew it must be the water ghost again, unable to bear it. But that woman's lifespan is clearly over. However, when the woman came ashore, he then realized that the woman was holding a baby under her umbrella. At that moment, he finally understood why the water ghost had spared that woman. But the woman not only crossed the river with the child, but also saved a life. Hei Wuchang's good intentions were once again betrayed. So I couldn't help but curse the water ghost as a fool, having to endure another 3 years. Whoever it was just sat there grinning at him foolishly. Helpless, Hei Wuchang could only return in frustration without achieving anything. But at that moment, Bai Wuchang then spoke up. He has to endure another 6 years. Yama will grant him an official position. This made the originally unhappy Hei Wuchang immediately followed Bai Wuchang back. He even asked Bai Wucheng if he could help him take a shortcut. A man eats only various animal tails 3 times a day. By a twist of fate, I ended up eating a human whip. As a result, they ended up eating ants. In just half a year, I managed to chew over 900. The level of strangeness in this matter may exceed your understanding. Suggest to invite good friends to watch together. The story takes place in a prison in a city in 2002. King Dewey and Hu Bufin are discussing the prison reform issues. They suddenly received a report from a member of the public. It was said that a corpse was found in their own cornfield. So they set aside what they were working on. Accompanied by the responding police officers, we arrived at the crime scene. Seeing the police arrive, the crowd immediately pointed to the cornfield nearby. King Dewey stepped forward and pushed aside the corn stalks. Inside, there was a middle-aged man dressed in black, curled up. That person's complexion was dark. It seems to have been dead for a long time. The accompanying forensic expert immediately stepped forward to examine the corpse. What is surprising is that, after forensic examination, it turned out that the person was not dead. The diligent team and the police officer beside them felt a jolt in their hearts. Immediately, he drove the man to the hospital. After the rescue at the hospital, the man soon woke up. The team immediately had a detailed discussion about the man. The man first felt a wave of fear. Then the story recounts the sequence of events. It turns out that the man is a tomb raider. That day he was scouting in the mountains. But at that moment, 2 farmers digging in the ground caught his attention. He discovered the dirt on the farmer's hoe. It is a special white clay used for filling ancient tombs. So they noted the location and waited until midnight to break in. Sure enough, this hole goes straight through. It really is an ancient tomb inside. What disappointed him was that this tomb was bare and unusually small. But just at that moment, he discovered a large red carpet placed in the center of the tomb. The blanket was covered with talisman papers, as if suppressing something. He stepped forward without saying a word. Suddenly he opened the lid. Although I have witnessed many frightening scenes, but the scene before him still made his heart tremble. Inside the blanket was actually a chubby bald man. The man's mouth was wide open, and lean back with your face towards the sky. The frightening thing was that suddenly black smoke began to pour out of the man's mouth. At that moment, the man's pupils suddenly locked in place. Once regaining composure, I slammed the lid down with a thud, then turned and ran away. This was also the first time he encountered such a situation. He turned back to take a glance behind. Then black mist appeared in the blanket. It has transformed into a human form and crawled out from under the blanket. He was so scared that he immediately crawled into the hole and desperately tried to climb outside. But just as I was about to crawl out of the hole, he could clearly sense that the shadow seemed to be following him as well. As soon as he crawled out of the hole, he took a stick of dynamite from his bag. After lighting it with a lighter, directly threw it into the hole. The explosives detonated near the out-of-control shadow with a loud bang. The power of this dynamite is truly impressive. It only took one to collapse the tunnel. He quickly left the scene, but suddenly everything went dark before his eyes and he fainted. But after the diligent team's meeting, it is impossible to determine whether what the man said is true. There was a very bizarre incident that occurred during the Qing dynasty. The local county magistrate had a peculiar hobby. That means I like to eat various animal tails. One day, by a stroke of luck, he actually wanted to taste the whip of a death row inmate. So, before the execution, he ordered the chef to cut down his whip. Then let the chef simmer a pot of fragrant bullet soup. I didn't expect this meal would be such a mess. This person's whip is simply delicious. It is said that during the feeding period he consumed no less than 1,000 human whips. He knows very well that he will definitely go to hell after death, so they entrusted someone to seal him in a big red jar. Kin Dewey listened to the tomb raider's story, subconsciously touched his whip. Then, following the clues provided by the tomb raiders, Kin Dewey quickly called for a crane to lift the jar out and crush it. A woman has been married for many years but has never been able to conceive. In desperation, I brought the guanyin of childbirth home. Unexpectedly, something happened that was beyond reach. That day, Lai Yang argued with her husband again. The husband unexpectedly left without caring about his feelings, and didn't return home all night. The two are arguing because they have been married for many years without children, but both of them went to the hospital for a checkup and found nothing wrong. However, the mother-in-law mocked Lai Yang every day. Over time, even her husband became unaware of this matter. Lai Yang felt very wronged, but had no way out. Gradually, he and his husband started to argue frequently. At such times, the mother-in-law would even add fuel to the fire. Expressing that it won't lay eggs is also pointless. Lai Yang, though in pain, still loved her husband. So the broken family remains as it is. One day, Lai Yang was on his way home from work. Suddenly, he saw an old lady staring at him intently, and also calculate his fortune. Lai Yang initially rejected the old lady outright. Unexpectedly, the old lady said she wanted to give him a guanyin of childbearing, and it was clear that Lai Yang had been troubled about the child for a long time. Lai Yang was surprised that the old lady had actually brought up his issue. "But I didn't leave, and I've already fallen in love." He asked the old lady how much the guanyin statue was. Who would have thought that the old lady wouldn't take a single cent? Guanyin was given to Lai Yang as a token of fate. In this way, Lai Yang took over the guanyin of the child deliverer. The old lady muttered something as she left. A life for a life, kindness yields goodness, while evil begets retribution. Lai Yang didn't think much and took guanyin home. He placed the guanyin on the table in the house. The mother-in-law thought guanyin was summoned to curse him. But Lai Yang explained that this is the guanyin of sending children. Mother-in-law hurriedly bowed to guanyin. That night, the mother-in-law even took the initiative to serve more dishes to Lai Yang. Even her husband found it a bit unbelievable. At night, Lai Yang heard a voice in his dream. An alluring voice shouted that it wanted to drink blood. Lai Yang followed the sound and walked into the living room. At that moment, the statue of the sending child guanyin glowed with an eerie red light. Lai Yang actually cut his finger with a knife, forced his own blood onto the guanyin statue. A month later, Lai Yang was actually pregnant. Mother-in-law began to take care of Lai Yang with great attention. Lai Yang, who had been bullied for a long time, started to boss around his mother-in-law. One day, he asked his grandmother if she knew how she got pregnant. Then he spoke about feeding the guanyin statue with blood every night. He said he was pregnant and couldn't nurse anymore. "I don't know if this will prevent me from keeping the child." Mother-in-law immediately responded that there was still him, and he cut his finger, forcing the blood onto the guanyin statue. Unexpectedly, the guanyin statue emitted golden light as if it had absorbed blood. The mother-in-law was even happier. The two agreed not to tell their husbands. Thus, the person who fed the guanyin statue every night became a grandmother. One day, Lai Yang felt very drowsy and fell asleep. In his dream, he saw a child with a bloodied face staring at him. Lai Yang sat up crazily and shouted that it wasn't his child. The mother-in-law rushed over thinking she had a blood deficiency, again starting to cut fingers to feed the guanyin statue. However, it was seen by Lai Yang's husband, who came because of the tattoo. The husband thought his mother was feeling hopeless and wanted to cut her wrists. Hastily grabbing hold of my mother, I accidentally knocked over the guanyin statue. The guanyin statue fell to the ground and shattered everywhere. Suddenly, a scream echoed from inside the house. The husband entered and found Lai Yang lying on the ground. The stomach burst open, bleeding profusely, and has already stopped breathing. The only thing that remained was the shattered guanyin statue resting on Lai Yang's stomach. The mother-in-law went crazy upon seeing this scene. Later, both mother and son disappeared into the city. Only this story of the guanyin who delivers children remains. Chapter 58, Taking Sister's Younger Sister Everywhere. They are twins, but they look completely different. Younger sister is naturally beautiful and very much loved by our parents, but the older sister was despised by her family for being too ugly. As she grew up, her popularity soared, and countless boys pursued her. In contrast, my sister is seen as an ugly girl in the eyes of boys and is not favored by the opposite sex. However, the bond between the two sisters was as strong as if they were one person. Even at a blind date, my sister insists on bringing me along. And to date her, you must accept one condition. No matter when or where, she must never let her sister leave her side. The man agreed immediately upon seeing her loyalty and deep feelings. Soon, the two confirmed their romantic relationship. But the scenes of them together always feel a bit strange. But the man didn't pay attention to these details. Before long, the three of them started living together. After spending some time together, they realized that they were both outstanding. So, just 3 months later, the two entered the hall of marriage. In the blink of an eye, a year has quietly passed. Today's men not only have new houses, and there were also considerable savings. But one day, the woman suddenly asked her husband if he would dislike her if she became ugly. The man saw this and comforted her by holding her close. He is attracted to a woman's inner qualities rather than her appearance. While the two were still lost in each other's affection, however, my sister appeared at the door at an inappropriate time. The man then realized, I haven't truly been alone with my wife since we started dating. He also began to doubt whether the two were really biological sisters. A man cannot bear such a life, desperately wanting to shake off her sister's entanglement. Under his careful arrangements, a group of 3 arrived at the amusement park. He wants to take the opportunity of riding the cable car to have a sweet moment with his wife. He revealed a victorious smile the moment he closed the door. However, after the cable car set off, the man scratched his head and pretended to his wife that it was not intentional. Unexpectedly, my wife rolled her eyes and had a blank expression with her mouth open. Then, in the next second, he suddenly collapsed without any warning. It was too late by the time the man took him to the hospital. The man wept uncontrollably upon hearing about his wife's death. He doesn't understand why a good person is so beautiful. After returning home, the man held the wedding photo and made a deadly bet. He found it hard to accept the fact that his wife had passed away. Suddenly, a rapid knocking sound echoed. The moment the man opened the door, he was stunned, because the person outside the door turned out to be his own wife, just when the man thought this was a dream. But his wife suddenly jumped up and hugged him. Feeling the warmth from his wife, the man was overwhelmed with emotion and tears streamed down his face. But the next second he saw his sister with a gloomy expression, although the wife's resurrection is rather strange. However, a man felt very fortunate to hold her in his arms again. But the man soon found it strange. A rope unexpectedly grew from the back of my wife's head. Curious, he followed the rope over. What he didn't expect was that the other end of the wire was actually connected to his sister's finger. The man called his sister up and questioned her about what this line was. Sister revealed the truth when she saw that the situation was exposed. A few years ago, he and his sister were riding bicycles on the road. Younger sister accidentally fell off the cliff. As a result, he lost his breath on the spot. It was at that moment that the elder sister discovered she could control her younger sister's body. So he controlled his sister and deceived their parents and everyone around them, although they don't seem similar, but the bond between the two is much stronger compared to other twins. As long as a thin thread connects the older sister, she can easily control her younger sister, and it's as convenient to use as your own body. The man looked utterly incredulous. But my sister said this is the truth. Moreover, the sister's essence is herself. So the man truly loves the older sister, not the younger sister. The sudden influx of information drove the man nearly insane. He ran into the bedroom like a madman, shaking his wife's body. But strangely, the wife showed no reaction. At that moment, the man realized that his sister had not deceived him. The heartbroken man instantly blamed his sister-in-law for his wife's death. Totally forgot what I initially said about only liking my wife's inner self and not her appearance. Suddenly, with a loud bang, the man fell hard to the ground. It turns out the older sister controlled the younger sister's body to save herself, but he couldn't understand why the man wanted to kill him. Does kindness's inner strength ultimately fall short against a beautiful exterior? Episode 59. Have you ever seen a turtle like this? The man originally intended to dig up some soil to improve his life. Unexpectedly, when I dug down with the spade, I uncovered a large lid that was moving. Several villagers were pondering what that thing was. Suddenly, the entire ground began to shake. A few people were so scared that they hurriedly ran away. Only Lai Zhongping was left jumping on the lid. Then the large lid directly rose up from the mud. Everyone then realized. It was a giant turtle as big as a truck. Suddenly, the village chief shouted while delivering a severed head. "This big turtle is quite rare. This must be reported to the higher authorities." Then they had Lai Zhongping and the others catch the big turtle. A few people brought a rope and rushed back to the river bank, just thinking of covering that turtle with a big net. But that turtle is really too strong. A few people simply couldn't tie him down, still being dragged by him, crawling towards the river. At this moment, someone suggested that if you turn a turtle over, it can't move. A few people finally reacted. So he hurriedly pushed the turtle aside. It took a lot of effort to flip that big turtle over. The turtle pulled its head and feet into its shell and stopped moving. Seeing this, everyone tied him up with ropes. Then it was secured to the ground again. Prepare to wait for the truck to come and take him away the next day. That night, Lai Zhongping and Erkan set up a tent to keep watch. Little did he know that that night, Lai Zhongping had a dream, dreaming of an old lady asking him to release her brother. Should be seated to oversee the comments section. Sending a dog head or tatting a fool is quite admirable. However, Lai Zhongping did not recognize that old lady. I don't really know what he's talking about. Just ask him who his brother is. The old lady thought he was pretending to be foolish, said a few curse words and then left. When I got up the next day, Lai Zhongping felt very strange when he thought of that dream. So I started talking to Erkan. Unexpectedly, Erkan had the same dream last night. As the two were talking, they saw the truck approaching. So they hurried to drag the giant turtle onto the cart. Unexpectedly, halfway through, Lai Zhongping then heard the faint sound of water waves coming from behind. When he turned his head, he saw a massive torrent rushing toward them. Lai Zhongping hurriedly shouted for the people on the river bank to quickly come ashore. After everyone on the river bank ran ashore, the water flow directly swept away the giant turtle. Upon closer inspection, another turtle appeared in the river. Moreover, both of them are about the same size. Lai Zhongping and Erkan were both taken aback, because they know the other turtle was probably the old lady from their dreams last night. After the two giant turtles swam away, a few people suddenly remembered that the river channel was clearly blocked. So how did the water come down? Later, I heard an old man who often fetched water by the river say, it turns out that he was drawing water there that day. Suddenly, a giant turtle the size of a truck swam by. After swimming to the Blue Water Dam, it crashed headfirst into the dam. The water flows just like that. A few years later, the village experienced another flood. But someone saw those two giant turtles. Some speculate that they are a married couple. Some say they are siblings. Since then, no one has seen them again. Chapter 60. The woman was scared by the monkey. Monkey King unexpectedly followed a young girl late at night, still shouting and asking the girl if she looks like a person. A lion who grew up in the countryside understood immediately. This is the big horse monkey asking for the wind. A lion's temper immediately flared up. Even the wind doesn't choose a good time, coming out in the dead of night to scare people. You are just a dead monkey. A lion threw down these words in annoyance and turned to run away. What a lion didn't know was, just because of her words, it sparked a huge fire. Because according to folklore, if this demon can't catch the wind, it will need to cultivate for another 100 years. It could even be because of something a human said. They ruined their path to immortality. Giving up on monkeys is just being petty. It seems the effort to seek the wind has failed. Lima immediately pressed forward, chasing after a lion to catch and bite her. Just when she was about to catch a lion, he raised his head and saw a burly man, still holding the hoe. It turns out the girl's husband, Lai Zhongping, has come to pick her up. The Malaysian monkey, despite some skill, was born timid. It made a few chirping sounds before running away. The two hurried home after confirming everything was fine. But what they didn't know was, at this moment, deep in the jungle, an old black monkey, with eyes glowing green, it stared at them intently. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early that morning, Zhu Hong was tidying up the house. Suddenly, I heard a strange buzzing sound coming from the roof. She looked up following the sound. I discovered a tall person squatting on the roof. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a monkey dressed in clothes and wearing a hat. This scared a lion quite a bit, but that big monkey just looked at her deeply a few times. Then he escaped by climbing over the wall, just as a lion still wore a face of surprise and uncertainty. Her mother-in-law suddenly pushed open the door and shouted angrily, dead monkey, do you know that my grandson has really died?" The voice was filled with resentment and anger. Then, without waiting for a lion to speak, the mother-in-law suddenly jumped over a meter high and rushed towards her. Then a pair of large hands tightly gripped her neck, continuing to scold her. "Why can't we say she looks like a person? You wicked woman!" Just when a lion was about to be strangled, Lai Zhongping had just returned from the fields. As soon as I entered, I saw my dear mother was angry with a lion. She was choked, foaming at the mouth, her eyes turning white. Lai Zhongping was stunned for a moment, but quickly understood. So I hurriedly searched around. Sure enough, it didn't take much effort to find it on the big tree outside the yard. I found that old monkey. At this moment, the old monkey was staring intently at Lai Zhongping's mother in the courtyard. Her eyes glimmered with a bewitching green light. Seeing this, Lai Zhongping threw the sickle in his hand away. It sliced a deep gash right on the old monkey's shoulder. The old monkey cried out in pain and fell from the tree. Then it screamed and ran away. At this moment, Lai Zhongbing's mother also woke up. Since then, the big macaque has never appeared again. I heard they were so scared that they didn't dare to come out and cause trouble anymore. Chapter 61. The Great Immortal Who Averts Disasters. Everyone knows there is a group that specializes in helping people start to dispel misfortune, but each region has a different name for them. In some places, they are called Da Zayin. Some places also refer to them as Shenpo. In summary, their goal is to deal with things that science cannot explain. The story takes place in my hometown, Kikahar, Heilongjiang, near Mount Nizi. At that time, Grandma did not agree to the marriage between my aunt and the boy from the same village. So they jumped into the Yalu River by our village and committed suicide. Because the river water is rushing, Aunt's body was quickly swept away. The entire village searched along the Yalu River for 2 days but found nothing. Grandma cries every day at home. When someone is alive, you want to see them. When someone dies, you want to see the body. Grandpa said no. I need to find someone to check it out tomorrow. Grandma had no choice but to agree. Finally, through introductions, Grandpa brought Grandma to find an old lady with the surname Hu. After Grandpa and Grandma entered the house, the man then took out 2 items from the inner room, a hand bone covered in copper coins and a short whip. The old lady asked in detail about the purpose of Grandpa and Grandma's visit. Grandma also bought a roasted chicken as instructed. After doing all this, the man let his grandmother go inside to offer incense to the immortals, and repeatedly urged Grandma not to look around randomly. Grandma entered the inner room. A large memorial tablet comes into view. Many offerings were placed on both sides. She didn't dare to look closely. Only faintly visible are the words on the tablet, mentioning a celestial family with the surname Hu. Grandma finished lighting the incense and walked out of the back room. After seeing Grandma, the man directly picked up the bone in his hand and slowly began to sing. It seems to be calling out to the celestial beings. The old lady's body began to sway with the drum beats. As the man's rhythm grew faster and faster, the old lady was shaking more and more violently. After a sudden and violent shaking, the old lady suddenly lifted her head, revealing a strange smile. When she saw the roast chicken on the table, her heart raced even more. They grabbed it and started eating frantically. In the blink of an eye, she ate a whole chicken clean. At that moment, she asked again what had brought her maternal grandfather and grandmother. It seems I have forgotten everything I just asked. Helplessly, Grandma repeated the story about my aunt again. After listening to my grandmother's words, the old lady began to lift her head and meditate. A moment later, she suddenly spoke up. She is in the reeds on the east side of the river at Senchazi downstream. But you still have 4 children. Only one can live a bit better. After the old lady finished speaking, the man began to sing again. It seems like they are sending the immortal family away, and the old lady slowly lowered her head. It's as if I fell asleep. After she lowered her head for a while, then he slowly lifted his head and said, "Can you find her body if you follow what the immortal said?" Grandpa and Grandma also listened to the old lady's words with half belief and half doubt. So after returning, I went to the reed marsh with a try it and see attitude. They really found Auntie's body with the cannon palm in the reeds. Later, it truly turned out as the old lady had predicted. Except from my mom, who is a bit better. The other 3 uncles have all encountered trouble. One had an industrial accident, and the other was in a car crash. One more has gone missing. Chapter 62. One shouldn't be too irritable. The weasel goes out for the first time to try matchmaking. Unexpectedly, a couple crushed his head, but the two saw that he could still lie motionless on the ground. So they fled the scene without looking back. Little did they know, the injured yellow weasel was glaring at them with fierce eyes. Little did they know, the consequences would come the next morning. The man was just about to get out of bed when he realized he couldn't move his legs. And there was also a sense of pain coming through. Called his wife to check, but found nothing unusual. The wife felt something was amiss and quickly invited Liu Banxian from the neighboring village. After telling him what happened yesterday, Liu Banxian guessed it must be that injured yellow weasel causing trouble. So he asked the other person to bring a black dog over. And the man's relative happened to have a dog. After bringing the black dog into the yard, it began to show off everywhere, finally stopped in front of an old water tank, and kept barking wildly inside. It seems something has been discovered. Liu Banxian guessed that the injured yellow weasel should be behind the water tank. Just as I was about to call him out, he turned and ran away. However, he couldn't run fast at all because he was injured, only able to move slowly while dragging a damaged hind leg. At this moment, the man in the room also returned to normal. However, he did not expect to see the real culprit as soon as he stepped outside. Grab the weapon and smash it immediately. Liu Banxian quickly intervened. But when that man's temper flares up, there's no stopping him. I could only watch helplessly as the other person's shovel came down, and this shovel directly smashed the weasel to death on the spot. Seeing this scene, Liu Banxian cursed loudly. Then he not only turned around directly and left. He said he can no longer handle this matter. Unexpectedly, the man was completely indifferent to this. In a fit of anger, they even skinned and cooked a weasel overnight to eat. Little did they know, the mother weasel watched the scene before her heart torn apart. By the next morning, the wife just got out of bed and noticed what seemed like a pair of legs swaying above her head. She looked and saw her husband hanging from the beam. Her scream quickly attracted the nearby villagers. However, they were all very puzzled about the man's death. Liu Banxian, who was hurriedly arriving, revealed the truth. This is the weasel's revenge. A life for a life. Hurry and check the other rooms to see if there are any yellow immortals who have hanged themselves. Soon they discovered something unusual in the west chamber. There is indeed a yellow weasel hanging dead from the beam, and he died just like the man did. Chapter 63. Don't wander around at midnight. A man is invited by a friend to his home for drinks. But my heart was always thinking of my delicate wife at home. Regardless of how his friends tried to persuade him, Lai Zhongbing insisted on going back. That's it. Lai Zhongbing, in a drunken stupor, rode home on his horse. However, not long after setting off, I fell asleep on the horse's back. I don't know how much time has passed. As a chill swept over, Lai Zhongbing slowly opened his eyes. But when I focused my eyes, I was instantly dumbfounded, because he realized he was surrounded by trees. After careful identification, it was found that this was actually deep in the mountains. Lai Zhongbing initially wanted to ride a horse to find the exit. However, the road in the mountains was heading south, making it impossible to ride a horse. Reluctantly, Lai Zhongbing could only dismount from the horse. Then, cautiously leading the horse, they searched for an exit. Suddenly, at this moment, the horse seemed to be startled. Before Lai Zhongbing could react, he vanished in the blink of an eye. Helpless, Lai Zhongbing could only continue searching for a way out with trepidation. Suddenly, it seems like there are people gathering in the woods ahead. This suddenly put Lai Zhongbing, who was originally scared, at ease. Then I followed the sound and walked over. Ahead, 3 people were drinking. It looks very pleasant. Lai Zhangping clasped his fists and bowed to them. Then I asked them how we could get out. However, the 3 of them were stunned when they saw Lai Zhangping. No one expected anyone to come at this time, but soon they warmly pulled Lai Zhangping to sit down and drink together. Lai Zhangping could only accompany them, unable to refuse their warm invitation. Then he started drinking 1 cup after another. Lai Zhangping didn't know how much he had drunk. After a hearty drink, Lai Zhangping couldn't help but enjoy his own talent, because he will be wealthy. So I started learning the sounds of various birds. To their surprise, the 3 of them mistook the bird calls for chicken sounds. Everyone was terrified, drenched in sweat. Lai Zhangping saw their condition, couldn't help but imitate several types of bird calls again. At that moment, one of the 3 heard the sound of a bird calling. Just let the other 2 partners feel at ease. Lai Zhangping found their embarrassing expressions quite amusing, couldn't help but burst into laughter. Then I told them what happened. The 3 of them found Lai Zhangping very interesting. Let's invite Lai Zhangping to come here for a drink during the Mid-Autumn Festival. It was only at this moment that Lai Zhangping realized he hadn't returned home all night. My beloved wife at home still doesn't know what to worry about. So they asked how those few people got out. But the 3 of them once again disregarded this topic. Lai Zhangping just performed a show for them. Now it's their turn. Without waiting for Lai Zhangping to react, the performance began. One of them stood there with arms crossed, standing straight. Then another person jumped onto that person's shoulder. After they steadied themselves, the other one jumped up as well. In this way, the 3 of them formed a human pyramid. But Lai Zhangping was extremely worried on the side. Just advise them to come down quickly. It's very dangerous. As a result, the 3 of them fell straight down. In this moment, Lai Zhangping suddenly let out a scream. Instinctively, I wanted to reach out and support. Unexpectedly, the 3 people vanished without a trace. A small path appeared before me. Lai Zhangping turned to look at the place where the 3 had just been drinking. At this moment, besides the stone bench and stone table, who else is there? Lai Zhangping had no time to spare for others. I could only return home along the narrow path, feeling anxious and fearful. Little did he know, after returning home, Lai Zhangping began to experience severe vomiting and diarrhea, and what came out was actually all green stuff. Even the things pulled out are green. Thus, Lai Zhangping rested in bed for a year. It gradually got better. From that day on, Lai Zhangping never dared to go out at night again. As for the Mid-Autumn Festival appointment with those 3 people, it ended up unresolved. Chapter 64, Soul Guarding Tower. Have you heard about the shocking Dandong Soul Tower in Liaoning? It is said that this tower was built to suppress the hundreds of wronged souls who perished in the theater fire. Someone once wanted to demolish this tower. However, he died on the spot. The level of strangeness in the event may exceed your imagination. Suggest you tag your unfortunate friend to watch together. The story takes place in the era of Manchukuo before liberation. At that time, there was a very popular Manchu theater in Dandong, Liaoning. At that time, Dandong City was the largest timber distribution center in the north, so the economy is very developed. Thus, it attracted merchants from all over the country to gather here. This Manju Grand Theater is the largest theater in the area. Every day, various performers come on stage to showcase their talents. The audience coming to watch the play is endless. It is said that one New Year's Eve, an old theater enthusiast brought his grandson here to watch a play. But just as I arrived at the theater entrance, the little grandson tugged at his grandfather's hand, refusing to go inside no matter what. This puzzled Grandpa greatly, so I asked him what was wrong. However, Sunzi unusually hid behind his grandfather. A look of sheer terror was still visible on their face. No matter how much Grandpa advised, he just wouldn't go in. He even pulled Grandpa outside relentlessly. Finally, under Grandpa's persistent questioning, Sunzi pointed at the people in the theater and explained the reason. He realized that all the guests inside were dark-skinned, and it looks especially terrifying. But Grandpa was instantly stunned upon hearing this. He usually takes his grandson to watch plays, but this kind of situation he mentioned today has never occurred before. To confirm what Sunzi said, he carefully looked again at the people in the theater, but it's lively inside, just like any other time. Just as the grandfather was about to force his grandson inside, Wu Liao Sunzi was so scared that he started crying. It was said that the person inside was entirely shrouded in darkness, making it impossible to see their features. Only the red meat is exposed outside. As soon as the words fell, those people seemed to transform into evil spirits in an instant, turned around and stared at oneself intently. Looking at their faces, the skin was all wrinkled and lacking moisture. The eyes looked very ghostly, without pupils. Some people's skin seemed to be melting away, continuously falling from their faces. In short, it looks incredibly terrifying. Grandpa listened as his grandson spoke with conviction. Seeing him cry like this, it doesn't seem like he's lying, although I am a drama enthusiast. But little Sunzi kept crying, making it impossible to watch. In the end, Grandpa couldn't resist his grandson anymore. Children's eyes are particularly pure, can see the dirty things that adults cannot. Is something really going to happen? Indeed, a frightening thing happened quickly. Just after the grandfather and grandson had left for a short while, there was a major fire at the Manju Grand Theatre. At that time, more than 1,000 people were seated in the theatre. In the end, everyone perished in the fire. After the fire was extinguished, the scene was truly devastating. Some people's burned flesh was stuck together. Some were even completely burned to ashes. There isn't even a body. After the official investigation, the cause of the fire was determined. It turned out that the furnace barrel in the background caught fire after turning red. The last shot is irreversible, burned the entire wooden theater to ashes. The theater owner was worried someone might sneak in without paying, so all exits were closed. The audience trapped by the fire had no way to escape, ultimately leading to such a tragic outcome. After the fire was extinguished, the government buried the deceased here. Since then, the theater started to become chaotic. One night, residents living nearby were awakened by a chilling sound of crying. Through their careful identification, the sound was coming from the direction of the theater. This sound is like thousands of people crying out in pain at the same time, constantly burrowing into people's minds. A splitting headache made me break out in cold sweat. After a month of tormenting brainwaves, residents who could no longer endure it protested at the Dandong city government. In the end, the government had no choice but to invite the monk from the temple to come and chant sutras. I want to help the spirits of the deceased by becoming a priest. And this grand mage worked for a full 49 days. Finally, according to the high monk's request, a large stone monument was built on the original site of the theater, the monument for the victims of the Manchuria theater disaster, to comfort the more than 1,000 souls. From then on, this stone tablet stood there, guarding the spirit of the formation. It hasn't been moved by anyone in nearly a century. However, during the Cultural Revolution, when the policy of breaking the old was implemented, at that time, There were Red Guards who wanted to smash this monument, but in the end they all died on the spot until recent years. The nearby neighborhood is set for demolition, but this stone tablet is quite obstructive, so they hired 2 workers to smash it. But they haven't started yet. The ground trembled. Suddenly, the brick wall next to them collapsed. The 2 workers realized it was already too late to escape. In the end, they were all crushed under the brick wall. After that, no one dared to challenge the master of the stone tablet again, after a long time of wind and rain, always feeling out of place in the surrounding environment. So far, that stone tablet still stands tall in a certain community in Dandong City, Liaoning Province. The 1934 Yinku Dragon Fall incident. I believe everyone has heard of it to some extent. It is said that the failure of the communication festival was struck by heavenly lightning. Media both at home and abroad rushed to report upon hearing the news. The story's level of intrigue may exceed your understanding. Suggest watching together with your friend 8. It was a day in August 1934. Liaohai River along the coast of Yingkou, Liaoning Province. Lai Zhongbing was driving his small boat as usual, fishing in the reed shack at the east end of the village. On ordinary days, you can easily catch several big fish. Today I don't know what's going on. I cast the net over a dozen times, but didn't catch a single fish. Helpless, Lai Zhongbing had no choice but to return home. But at that moment, a huge shadow suddenly swam beneath the ship, and extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the reeds. Lai Zhongbing spent his whole life dealing with the things in the lake. While he was lost in thought, a sudden force surged from beneath the water. Lai Zhongbing suddenly lost his balance and fell into the lake. Fortunately, Lai Zhongbing's swimming skills are quite good. Breathed in quickly, but he had just steadied himself. A powerful current surged from behind. Lai Zhongbing turned around in fright, but only saw the monster's tail. The monster's body was covered in scales. There are still a bunch of sharp claws growing beneath. Lai Zhongbing was extremely afraid, quickly swam towards the shore. This time, Lai Zhongbing had good luck. Successfully climbed ashore. He didn't dare to stay by the shore any longer. Liang Liang returned home with a cheerful demeanor. He didn't want to come home just to develop a high fever. Still murmuring in his mouth, "There is a dragon." Seeing the high fever persist, the family was anxiously running in circles. Can't pay attention to the adults outside. Quickly found an ox cart to take Lai Zhongbing to the hospital. This heavy rain is called a downpour. It's as if a hole opened in the sky, pouring down water endlessly. Meanwhile, not far from Lai Zhongbing's house is old Liu's house. Lao Liu watched as the rain poured down heavier and heavier, just getting ready to close the curtains and go to sleep. But the scene outside the window left him speechless. Outside the window, a dragon-like creature was desperately trying to fly up into the sky. As soon as he just flew to the door, a bolt of lightning struck down fiercely. The dragon-like creature felt like vomiting upon seeing it. It was as if the thunder had eyes, continuously striking him. At this moment, old Liu finally snapped out of his shock, hastily turned to call his wife to watch together. When the two looked out the window again, the dragon-like creature had already vanished. My wife thought Lao Liu was joking, turned around and went back to sleep. The heavy rain had been pouring for several days before it finally stopped. As soon as the rain stopped, many villagers gathered together. Everyone said they saw a dragon that night. The scene described was just as old Liu had seen it. Some say it is the Jiao long wishing to overcome tribulation and soar into the sky. But the result was not successful. It has been less than 2 days since then. Old man Wang from the neighboring village discovered the situation again. That day the sun was shining brightly. The light was so bright that I could hardly open my eyes. Old Wang intended to go work in his own fields. But while passing through the reeds, a strange roar was heard. Old Wang had never heard such a sound before. Driven by curiosity, I walked over. But the scene before me, he was immediately so scared that his legs started shaking uncontrollably. Fortunately, I had a hoe to support me, or I would have collapsed on the ground. Only the creature had feet on its head, covered in scales. Underneath, there are claws like those of a chicken. The tail looks a bit like a fish, and is covered in a mane like a horse. Old Wang's heart was filled with excitement. Only one word floats in my mind. That is a dragon. But this dragon is covered in wounds. It still emits a strong foul odor. It was just noon. If he is left to bask in the sun, he definitely won't survive. Old Wang hurried back to the village to call for help. The villagers were very enthusiastic after hearing this, because the common people believe that dragons are auspicious creatures. No one is unwilling to help. The villagers arrived at the scene. First, cover the dragon's body with straw mats and leaves. Then pour water over him, one basin at a time. But the effect seems to be minimal. The dragon lay there, motionless. The villagers knelt on the ground and prayed to the heavens. I hope the heavens can spare the dragon. I don't know if it had any effect. The originally clear sky quickly turned overcast. Everyone hurried back home. Only the giant dragon lay in the muddy water, although the rain is quite fierce this time. But there was not a sound of thunder or lightning. The rain comes quickly and leaves just as fast. Just a little over 10 minutes, the heavy rain stopped. The villagers can go to capture the tail again. The dragon had already vanished. Only a ground covered with branches and grass mats remains. It is also worth mentioning that villager Zhang San picked up a bell piece from the mud pit. However, it was lost during a later move, after the dragon fall incident spread. Both domestic and international media are vying to report on this matter. Many people have also come to the land of the fallen dragon out of admiration. However, there were no discoveries. Episode 66, Memories from a Past Life. This is a true event reported in the news from Giju. The boy said he had regained memories of his past life as soon as he turned 5. The level of strangeness in this matter may surpass your understanding. Suggest to invite friends to watch together. The story begins in 1970. In an ordinary Dongzu village in Giju province. There is a child in the village named Wu Peng. Just turned 5, suddenly ran to Mom and said, Mom, I remember my past life. In my past life, my surname was Long, just a few dozen kilometers away in Dinxi village. Can you take me back to my past life home? Mom naturally didn't believe it after hearing that. I thought my son was just talking nonsense from watching too much TV. He immediately hugged his son to his chest. Remind him not to speak carelessly again. Wu Peng seemed very reluctant after hearing that, but it was no longer addressed. Children's first day of school is either filled with tears or excitement. But Wu Peng has neither of these, just sitting there in a daze. Not long after, Teacher Lai noticed this. After class, Wu Peng was called to the office. What's wrong with you? Why do you keep daydreaming in class? Wu Peng did not respond after hearing this. Instead, they asked Teacher Lai if he was from Shamo town. Before Teacher Lai could respond, Wu Peng said that in his past life, he lived in Shamo town, Dinxi village. Teacher Lai was about to scold Wu Peng, but suddenly hesitated, because Wu Peng was actually speaking Chinese. and it also has the dialect from desert town. This cannot be learned in the Dongzu village. Little did they know Wu Peng was pulling on his own ears, saying there was evidence behind this. Teacher Lai hurriedly gathered money to take a look. I saw a red birthmark behind the ear. It actually resembles a seal. Teacher Lai wanted to confirm the authenticity of the birthmark. He rubbed it hard with his fingers. After rubbing it for a long time, there was not a hint of fading. Wu Peng saw that the teacher believed his words. He asked the teacher to take him to find his parents from his previous life. Teacher Lai did not refuse upon seeing this. After all, he also wants to know the truth of this matter. But before that, we must first seek Wu Peng's mother's consent. Wu Peng's mother was somewhat reluctant, but in the end I agreed for my son's happiness. After walking for 2 hours on the mountain path, Teacher Lai and Wu Peng finally arrived at Dingxi village. As soon as they entered the village, Wu Peng pointed to the house ahead and said, "That is the home from one's past life." Wu Peng is extremely excited at this moment. He ran over and opened the door directly. "Mom, Dad, Grandma, I'm back." As soon as the words fell, Wu Peng had already plunged into a woman's embrace. Then he turned to the old man beside him. "Grandma, it's your grandson Long Qingliang." Wu Peng saw that Grandma didn't believe him. Again, I found the stamp behind my ear. Seeing this scene, Grandma instantly remembered, and mentioned what happened 8 years ago. It turns out that many years ago, son Zilong Qingliang fell seriously ill. It seems like I won't be able to survive much longer. I've heard that marking children may carry over to the next life. So Grandma took out her father's dragon cabinet. The stamp was pressed onto the child's bottom, although the mark now rests on the ear. But it is still clearly discernible. The whole family believed that Wu Peng was indeed the deceased Long Qingliang who had been gone for 8 years. From then on, Wu Peng had 2 homes. The 2 families interacted with each other like relatives, became a local legend. Later, experts went there to conduct an investigation. It turns out that many villagers retain memories from their past lives. After this matter spread, it also triggered numerous media reports. Episode 67. Soran Well, have you heard about the shocking Xiulong well that stunned the nation? The well is surrounded by 7 iron chains. It is said that every full moon night, the iron chain leading to the well will shake violently. The level of strangeness in this situation might exceed your imagination. Timid friends, please crouch in the bathroom and watch slowly. The story takes place in the capital city during the last century. There is an ancient well here. There are 7 stone pillars surrounding the well. Moreover, each stone pillar has an iron chain leading down to the well. Strangely, every full moon night, the chain leading to the well will shake violently. It was as if something was tied to the other end of the iron chain in the well. Because the well is so deep, you can't see the conditions below the water. So someone wanted to pull the iron chain up. Let's see what is tied at the bottom of the well. But unexpectedly, the chain was pulled up several hundred meters. The result still seems to have no end in sight. At this moment, the clear sky suddenly turned overcast. While looking at the pulled-up iron chain, I discovered there was actually a chunk of something meaty and bloody stuck on top. It feels cool to the touch. As a few people were pondering what this thing was, suddenly a bolt of lightning struck from the sky. It hit a tree right behind a few people. The tree was instantly split in half. This scared everyone. Everyone believes this is a warning from the heavens, because it is rumored that a dragon is locked inside this well. The coward quickly dropped the iron chain and left. The remaining people didn't dare to linger much longer. As for those iron chains that were dragged up, They slowly sank back into the well. Later on, every year someone committed suicide by jumping into the well, and several have already died one after another, even the parents of the last woman who threw herself into the well. I almost dream every night of my daughter saying it's cold at the bottom of the well. So the family had no choice but to hire a professional body retrieval expert. Which body retrieval worker dares to approach the vicinity of Jink City, but has long been surrounded by people. It was clear that the villagers were very enthusiastic. Lai Zhangping, a professional corpse retrieval expert, immediately put on the ancestral fish skin. Then he tied the prepared rope around his waist. He slowly descended along the wall of the well, but when he descended to a depth of several meters, I noticed that the iron chain was trembling incessantly, like something alive was tied up, struggling fiercely. After about 10 minutes had passed, Lai Zhangping finally saw the water's surface. Then he suddenly plunged in. Little did they know, as soon as they reached underwater, a gigantic creature appeared beside them. Moreover, there was not just one baring its teeth and rushing towards him. Fortunately, Lai Zhangping is a great swimmer, suddenly dodged the giant's attack. Unexpectedly, the rope tied around the waist was bitten into 2 pieces. He originally planned to help her to the surface. Unexpectedly, there were several large creatures circling above my head. Suddenly, a big guy came rushing down from above. At this moment, Lai Zhangping could only choose to dive, because he felt the water flowing at the bottom of the well, determined that the connection is definitely linked somewhere. Indeed, Lai Zhangping swam into an open area of water, and at this moment his breath was about to run out, just as he was about to resign himself to fate. Suddenly a bright light appeared above, so he swam up with all his strength. Soon it surfaced. At this moment he realized he was already inside a cave. I finally understood that this Longjing is connected to the cave, but thinking of the big guy I just encountered, he didn't dare to stay any longer. Straining with all their might, they swam towards the cave entrance. Not far behind, there was a sound like a raging sea. Only then did those big fellows catch up. But at the entrance of the cave, they discovered it was a cliff. He quickly grabbed the chain at the cave entrance. But unexpectedly, the chain was long and slippery, making it impossible to grasp. Thus, Lai Zhangping fell into the abyss below. When he woke up again, he was already lying in a farmer's house. It turned out that the old man had caught Lai Zhangping while fishing. Lai Zhangping also took a full half-month to recover before he could come down. It's just strange that he was rescued surprisingly more than 10 miles away from Xiulongjing. Later, people wandered around for over 10 days, but they could never find the entrance to the underground river. No one can clearly say what is actually tied up inside the Dragon Lock Well. Chapter 68. Protect the environment. This man actually created a mini-Earth, although people see him as a whimsical madman. But unexpectedly, after 10 years of hard work, he really succeeded. He knew that if he added a little water now, the small Earth would enter a snowball phase. Indeed, the small round ball was quickly covered in white snow and ice. The man was very pleased to see this. He discovered that House volcano had trembled and unexpectedly entered the Jurassic period. At this moment, the noisy sounds of renovation came from upstairs. I never expected that a tiny tremor would bring a great disaster to the mini world. He discovered that the volcano inside had trembled and unexpectedly entered the Jurassic period. At that moment, he began to feel all the warmth. He began to be insulted by others. He began to worry people. He started to worry people. He began to be suspected by people. He began to be suspected by others. He began to be suspected by others. He began to be suspected by people. He began to be suspected by people. This tiny little vibration brought a major disaster to the mini world. He discovered that the volcanoes inside were shaking and unexpectedly erupted collectively. The man accidentally set the temperature in the mini world to -60 degrees. Suddenly it turned into the Ice Age. Plus, there were continuous renovation noises coming from upstairs. Almost destroyed the mini-Earth. Fortunately, he adjusted his life and time. This is why they haven't all gone extinct. Soon after, a Homo erectus appeared inside. The man looked very happy upon seeing him, because this means that the evolution into humans is not far off. The result was as expected. 2 hours later, the primitive man was born. But before they could even take a few looks, humanity evolved into the Mingjeng society. The man felt this was simply an accelerated version of human history. Next, the steam train appeared, heralding the industrial society. Accompanied by micro-humans entering the industrial society, the micro-Earth has also faced disaster. They recklessly cut down trees for resources. As a result, the once lush forest turned into bare, rocky mountains one by one. The micro-humans factory indiscriminately released waste into the atmosphere, seeing this man about to explode with anger. Watching as the micro-Earth I created faces a huge crisis, he was at a loss. Reluctantly, he punished the micro-Earth in the name of the Creator God. The world inside the result suddenly faced a scene akin to the end of days. What men never expected was this group of micro-humans quickly rebuilt their home. Instead of restraining themselves, they became even more unbridled. They even started killing each other to plunder resources. The man saw this complete puppet. So he adjusted the temperature down again. Unfortunately, the micronauts did not go extinct because of this. Instead, it stubbornly survived. Slowly, most animals lost their lives due to environmental degradation. Humans waged war once again to plunder resources. As a result, the micro-world was thrown into chaos and devastation. The man gazes at the world he has created. Step by step, it was completely destroyed and collapsed by the micro-humans. So he picked up the hammer that was placed aside. In the next moment, the sound of shattering glass split the microcosm in two. After reading this story, let us all cherish and take good care of the environment we rely on for survival. Episode 69, The Cycle of Heaven's Tao. These foolish people actually dug up the wild man by the roadside, carried the coffin back to the family home, although usually reluctant to spend on food and clothing. But every day they lavishly offered good wine and fine meat to that idol official. Ying Shu will testify in the comments section. Dodhead, or AIT, is a respectable person. It turns out all of this was due to their misunderstanding of the charlatan's words. They believed that placing the coffin in the small attic of the house, may it bless future generations with wealth and high positions. But the three brothers originally fled to this village, so there are no relatives here, let alone the ancestral grave, so they unprecedentedly dug up a grave. As a result, it was only a couple of days later. The elderly lady from the family whose grave was disturbed came knocking at the door. The three could only see him as a lonely outcast. The body is still weak and cannot withstand the wind and bone structure of Ling Zun. He angrily kicked the old lady out of the door. The helpless old lady could only sit sadly at the entrance, praying for them to return her husband's remains. A kind-hearted villager passing by learned of this matter. Everyone was filled with indignation, standing up for the elderly. Several villagers who couldn't stand the actions of these three brothers on ordinary days. He grabbed the weapon and charged inside. On that day, only the third brother was at home. When he learned that the villagers were going to carry away the coffin, he quickly pulled a gun from his pocket. Then there were several gunshots fired at the ceiling. He suddenly dropped a harsh threat, telling everyone to get out. The villagers had never seen such a spectacle. Everyone was frightened in an instant. It is rumored that these three brothers were bandits before. It truly seems to be the case now, as the villagers were being pushed back step by Lao San. The old lady accidentally tripped again while pushing herself. What was even more unexpected was that this fall cost him his life. This old lady is also a person of misfortune. No children under the knee. My partner passed away early too. I never expected that even in death I would be dug up by someone. The villagers held a simple birthday celebration for the old lady. Then he was buried together with the portrait of his late partner. After those three brothers made a big mistake, not a trace of regret. However, it wasn't long after the old lady was buried. The boss brought back a silly wife from another city. Later, the silly girl became pregnant. The hospital is about to give birth, but the child in her womb was born prematurely. The child born was not only frail, but also had a faint cry, and it has been 2 days without opening her eyes. This inevitably made the leader very worried. Finally, the child opened their eyes on the 3rd day. But when the boss saw the child's eyes, but was startled. One of the child's eyes seemed normal. What's even more surprising is that, later, the doctor confirmed that the child had problems with both eyes. Simply put, it's a blind person. This boss is also ruthless. Unfeelingly threw the child into the icy, snowy mountains. Let him live or die on his own. The villagers all talked about him behind his back. He believed he had dug up someone else's grave and faced retribution. After that, strange occurrences continued to happen to these three brothers. First, the third son's wife died during childbirth. At the same time, the child he gave birth to was also a monster. The body is very weak, passed away before reaching a month old. The three brothers were afraid of truly being cut off from their lineage. Just take the coffin out from the attic. Buried next to the old lady's grave. Lao San was deeply affected after losing his wife and child in quick succession. So one night, I packed my belongings and left the village. Later, the eldest also left one after another. The second couple and the discarded foolish daughter-in-law chose to stay here, although the second child's baby did not die at birth. But he was born with a flaw. Not only is he a cripple, but he is also blind in one eye. It was just a coincidence. The old lady's husband actually has one blind eye. Seventh truth. Old beggar. Who would have thought the old beggar was actually a recluse master? He taught him various spells from the Lu Ban book. The story takes place in the last century about a man named Lai Zhongping. At that time, winter greenhouses were just beginning to emerge. Lai Zhongping and his wife Alliance set up 2 large greenhouses to sell vegetables. And it was just November, and the weather was extremely cold. But on their way back, they encountered an old beggar. I don't know if he is injured or just cold. In short, curled up under the tree was quite distressing to see. Seeing this situation, Lai Zhongping got out of the car to see how the old beggar was doing. Only after he went up to observe carefully did he discover the old beggar actually had nothing wrong. It's just that he's too evil and older, making him quite weak. Adding this freeze caused more problems. The old man quickly begged Lai Zhongping to save him. In that era, no one was considered wealthy. But actually, it's not a big deal for that one meal. Lai Zhongping helped the old beggar onto the car. They are both warm-hearted. As soon as I got home, I hurriedly helped the old beggar onto the kang, and she also warmed up some porridge for him to eat. I never expected the old beggar's skills with the stone and stick were quite remarkable. Without being polite, just said they want to eat roasted chicken tonight. The couple immediately felt a pang of heartache. They might not even be willing to eat roast chicken during festive occasions. But thinking about it, the old man might not have had good food for a long time. So they, being kind-hearted, agreed. By night the old beggar was quite unreserved. Hudding a roast chicken is just a feast of gnawing. In no time they finished off the entire roasted chicken. Little did he expect the old beggar to be eating roasted chicken. On the other hand, he said he would live at Lai Zhangping's house in the future. After speaking, he returned to the kang, and still being picky after getting drenched, instructed Lai Zhangping. The roast chicken made by the two of them was too bland. They need to add more salt tomorrow. But this time a lion was unwilling. He complained to Lai Zhangping non-stop. He said his father left early, lacking paternal love. In the end, I found myself a father. What he didn't expect was that the old beggar would stay at his home for an entire month. Moreover, this month I've had roasted chicken 3 times a day. Lai Zhangping has exhausted all his family's resources after the feast. And in just one day, the roast chicken was replaced with congee. The beggar reluctantly approached and slammed the table. He said he wants to eat roast chicken. He won't eat anything after mentioning the roast chicken. He directly went back into the house. Even want Lai Zhangping to prepare 2 roast chickens tomorrow morning. A lion was even less willing. Glaring at Lai Zhangping, he accused him of causing trouble by trying to be the good guy. But life must go on. Lai Zhangping could only endure a little more hardship to satisfy the old beggar. So it was like this. The old beggar stayed at his home for more than 2 full months. Until it's almost New Year. Lai Zhangping and his wife took advantage of the high vegetable prices to sell all the crops from their greenhouse. I also bought some New Year's goods to prepare for the celebration. But when the two of them returned, they found the old beggar had left without anyone noticing. He just left a book on the kang where he usually sleeps. Seeing this, they thought the old beggar felt that his family couldn't afford to support him, so he left. So he hurried out to search for the old beggar. But in the end he was nowhere to be found. Who knew that Lai Zhangping slept at night? Suddenly I had a very strange dream. In his dream he saw that old beggar. The old beggar said he had been eating and drinking for free at their home for a long time. So, in order to repay the kindness, he taught him the spells from the Lubin book. Although the spells in the Lubin book are all minor spells, but it was enough for Lai Zhangping to rise and prosper. For example, the book he is using is a dream entry book that can enter others' dreams. It is also said that Lai Zhangping has no father, no mother, and no offspring. Just right for this missing volume of the Lubin book. Wait until the next day to wake up. Lai Zhangping hurried to look at that book. Since then, every day in his dreams, the old beggar would teach him the spells from the Lubin book. After studying for 6 months, he finally made his official debut. By coincidence, on that day, the villager Yang Dianfang suddenly collapsed on the ground. Everyone looked and didn't dare to touch it, afraid of being contaminated by something unclean. Lai Zhangping immediately thought to test the waters. He quickly called the villagers to bring him 3 bricks and a willow branch. Then he placed the willow branches on Yang Dianfeng's body. Then he dipped a willow branch in cool water and gave it a crack. Unexpectedly, Yang Dianfeng suddenly woke up, but he has no idea what just happened. This is Lai Zhangping telling him that he should have charged at something. Just let him go home and eat a couple more kidneys, and he'll be fine. Everyone was very surprised upon seeing it. From then on, every day, many people come to Lai Zhangping's house to ask him to write or to seek medical treatment. Chapter 71. Ghost Grandmother. Lai Zhongbing's newborn baby has passed away, just about to throw it to the chaotic ridge. During that time, there weren't many conditions at home for seeing a doctor. The dead child can only find a place to bury themselves. So Lai Leihan watched the distant figure of Lai Zhongbing. With a deep sigh, I could only return home. But just at that moment, Lengzi suddenly rushed in from outside in a panic. As soon as he entered the room, he slammed the door shut as if something was chasing him. Then they said in terror that they had encountered a ghost. Lai Leihan instantly felt furious. But Lengzi began to recount his experiences while leaning against the door. Early in the morning, Lengzi went to the neighboring village, Gujaya, to borrow grain. The lone father's family is also quite good. He filled half a bag with cornmeal. As a result, he happily and confusedly walked into a graveyard. By the time he realized it, 10 days had already passed. Lengzi could only curse inwardly while quickening his pace forward. Suddenly, he felt a pair of eyes staring at him intensely from behind. That feeling sent a chill down Lengzi's spine. So he carefully turned his head to look. Except for a few lonely graves behind, there is nothing else. Lengzi thought he was just imagining things. So he quickened his pace and walked ahead. But gradually he realized something was wrong. This mass graveyard, although large, it shouldn't take this long to get out. Could it be that we've run into a ghost wall? Just as I was thinking, a baby's cry suddenly came from behind. The sound was chilling in the silent forest. Then Lengzi hurriedly turned around and realized. A person suddenly appeared behind me without my noticing. This scared Lengzi to death. Could it be a ghost? At that moment, an old lady was standing in the woods, holding a baby whose fate is uncertain. The old lady's complexion was pale. A strange smile still lingered on his face. Staring intently at Lengzi, Lengzi was so scared that his heart nearly jumped out of his throat. So it didn't matter whether there was a road or not. Turn around and run away. Fortunately, that old lady didn't catch up. Lengzi nervously finished recounting his terrifying experience. The old couple exchanged a glance and fell silent. Little did they know, early the next morning. You can see many people on the street holding weapons. But only after asking did I find out. Last night, Lai Zhongbing's wife was almost driven mad with longing for their son. Must drag Lai Zhongbing to the chaotic burial site to abandon the child. Instead, I saw an old lady, after chopping the child's body into pieces, place it into a bag. An old man walked in from behind the crowd. It seems he is quite familiar with the old lady at the mass grave. So they started to chatter on and tell everyone the story. It turns out that the old lady was a demon who practiced evil sorcery. The corpse of a dedicated infant is used to brew a magic potion. It is said that drinking it can make one a celestial being. The old man had seen that old lady in the mass grave site since he was a teenager. When I saw her, the old woman was gnawing on a dead child's hand. Don't mention how scary it was. So from that time on, every year, the bodies of children go missing. Then everyone came together to the potter's field and discovered a few old houses behind the woods. It seems very likely that this is the abandoned lair of that old witch. As the crowd broke down the door, a foul stench hit them. The flavor all comes from a big pot. There are still some bones scattered on the ground. Only when a few people approached did they realize. In the pot, there were actually a few pieces of overcooked red meat floating. In their anger, everyone decided to set the place on fire. Before long, the fire engulfed the entire house. And that old lady never appeared again. Chapter 72. The Magical Disappearance Method. A man's body will disappear as soon as it touches water. But instead of being afraid, she thought of a way to earn millions by sunset. So that day she wrapped herself up tightly. Then they came to someone else's door and poured the water inside. As the water slowly seeped into the house, the man slowly submerged into the water. In the next moment, with a loud crash, the man returned to his original appearance, and she successfully infiltrated the house. She immediately packed all the valuable items in the room into her backpack. I found some hidden money in the wardrobe in the back room. Since then, the man became increasingly insane. In just a few days I made several million. Moreover, such brazen actions have left no clues behind. The police had no leads other than a small trace of water. A couple sighed about the strange happenings of the year after watching the news. Little did they know that the one who was so big was actually their son, until the man slammed a large bag of money in front of the old couple. They faintly sensed some unusualness. Because the old couple knew their son was just an unemployed youth, such a huge amount of money must have an improper source. So the father advised him to return the money intact. The man, eager to prove himself, became furious upon hearing this. The father and son had a big argument over this. The result ended in an unhappy conclusion. At that moment, the man did not realize that his father was only looking out for him. Blinded by anger, he decided to take down the bid won, then buy a villa to live in. So he set his sights on the richest man, Lai Zhongbing. But once he started his actions, he realized the mansion of the billionaire was heavily guarded. Don't say it's gone in. Even just hanging around the doorway would get you questioned by the bodyguards. But there is always a way out. After observing, the man found that every day a truck delivering spring water entered the courtyard. Finally, the man came up with a good idea. A few days later, he quietly approached while the dock workers were not paying attention, then silently blended into the bottled water. By the time the workers noticed something was wrong, the man had already disappeared. In this way, he quietly sneaked into the home of the richest man. After a while, he confirmed it was safe and climbed out of the bucket. But the large room doesn't even have a safe. Moreover, the drawer was completely empty except for the bottle of mysterious pills. However, when the man saw the sign "Heaven rewards diligence," he seemed to remember something. He remembers that the big bosses in movies often hide safes behind paintings like this. As expected, in the end, he really found it. But he just splashed water on the safe. Suddenly, the entire room was filled with the sound of alarms. The man wanted to hide in the safe. I never expected this wealthy cabinet to be so intricate. Water cannot seep in at all. The helpless man could only return to the bucket once again. After the bodyguard rushed in, he found everything in the room to be normal. So they casually moved the water bucket outside. It was already lunchtime. To prepare ingredients for the billionaire, the chef poured water into the pressure cooker. Before the man could react, the chef slammed the lid down tightly. As the temperature in the pot rises higher and higher, the chefs suddenly caught a whiff of a fragrant meat aroma. One could say that if you don't go looking for trouble, you won't find it. Chapter 73. Folklore says, according to Folklore, the officials need to sleep in separate rooms the night before. During the procession, the coffin must never touch the ground. At the same time, no one on the way can say the words Zhang or Chen. Otherwise, it's easy to encounter strange and bizarre events. In those years, cremation had basically become the norm in our hometown. Some elderly people were afraid of fire in their lifetime. So before passing away, they would remind their family to ensure a burial. However, some people buried during the day may be reported by others. Then the higher-ups ordered to dig up the bodies again for cremation. So some people choose to bury their dead secretly at night. As for the officials in Taiwan, they just find relatives or neighbors to fill the numbers. So I'm not particularly clear about the taboos of those Taiwanese officials. A few young adults can carry a coffin easily, but when they reached a slope halfway up, an accident still happened. I felt exhausted going uphill. One person accidentally said, "I'm so tired." Then another person chimed in, saying it's so heavy. Before the words had finished falling, a few people felt the coffin on their shoulders was as heavy as a large stone. Then they heard a few muffled sounds coming from inside the coffin. It sounds like someone is banging on the coffin lid inside. The old man's son said tremblingly, "Could it be that mother is like this?" Before the result was completed, an elder beside them covered their mouth. Then she scolded him for talking nonsense. The few officials of Kitagyuan could no longer withstand the disturbance from within the coffin. Then it fell to the ground with a clatter. Everyone's eyes widened, staring blankly at the creaking coffin. Little did they know the coffin was making an increasingly loud commotion. Even the fixed rope is about to snap. Seeing this, the old man's son hurried back to the village to invite the well-informed Uncle Liu. After all, it's my own child. Today, those attending the funeral are all the younger generation of the family. They don't understand the rules either. If anyone says something wrong, let them apologize. After speaking, Uncle Liu commanded everyone to kneel and bow their heads. At this moment, the sound from the coffin indeed grew quieter. It wasn't until the incense burned out that Uncle Liu finally spoke to start the funeral, and until the burial, the coffin showed no changes. Later, Uncle Liu explained that a few juniors of the official didn't understand the rules and said inappropriate things on the road. Episode 74, The Railway Monster. Have you heard about the shocking Qinghai Tibet railway monster incident? In the middle of the night, a worker who had fallen asleep was suddenly grabbed by a huge monster. They even deployed the army to deal with this man-eating monster. The level of strangeness in this matter may exceed your imagination. Please tag your original friends to watch together. The story takes place in the Qinghai Tibet Plateau in 2005. That year marked the construction period of the Qinghai Tibet Railway. Due to the harsh environment, the salary and benefits are very good. Lai Zhongping followed his fellow villagers to this place. However, due to the high altitude, many workers still experienced altitude sickness. Construction has come to a halt, and the large machinery and people have been removed. Thus, their work became the maintenance of the railway and guarding the construction site. But I haven't worked like this for a few days yet. Lai Zhongping encountered an unforgettable event in his life. It was around 1 o'clock in the morning. Suddenly, a cry for help came from the neighboring tent. Lai Zhongping and the villagers were suddenly awakened. They didn't even wear jackets. He grabbed a shovel and rushed out. Only then did I see that the tent belonging to Gong Yuzhu had already changed shape, and there are also torn marks on it. Lai Zhongping hurried to the front of the tent to check the situation, but the scenes inside left them in shock. The things inside the tent were particularly messy. It looks as if a fight has occurred. Even stranger is, there are scratch marks and several bloodstains on the sleeping bag. This scared Lai Zhongping quite a bit. The wildlife on the Qinghai Tibet Plateau is particularly abundant. There have also been incidents of attacks on humans. At that moment, the villager beside him noticed. In the corner of the tent lies a male, uncertain if he is still alive. Seeing this, Lai Zhongping hurriedly helped the public official up. Fortunately, he only sustained minor injuries. Jian Gong has woken up. Lai Zhongping then asked him what had just happened. "Where has the public property gone?" He said there was a huge monster that wanted to eat him. The monster's eyes are shaped just like light bulbs. Capturing the other public figure with one hand, he escaped and urged Lai Zhangping to hurry and save him. Otherwise, he will be eaten by that monster. Then he pointed with his right hand in the direction where the monster had fled, although there is an inexplicable fear of that monster. However, Lai Zhangping still chased after the messenger, after chasing for about 100 meters. Upon sending someone off, a huge mark was discovered on the ground. It looks like the size was left when the person was dragged, and there are several footprints nearby. It doesn't look like a wolf pack. But when they got closer to take a look, suddenly I felt a chill run down my spine. Because that footprint is just too big. It needs to be several times larger than a human. Just from this huge footprint, that monster is at least 3 or 4 meters tall. Just when the two of them were at a loss, suddenly sounds of footsteps and dragging objects came from afar. At that moment, they both noticed a huge shadow ahead. The silhouette was very imposing. His entire body was still covered in black hair. At this moment, he was dragging someone along the ground. And that person is Gong Yu, who was taken away by the monster. At that moment, he had his eyes tightly shut, clearly unconscious. Seeing this situation, Lai Zhangping and Song Rentu were both a bit startled. Song Ren suggested returning to call for help, but Lai Zhangping knew it was already too late. The monster was about to disappear from their sight. Lai Zhangping raised the shovel and shouted, "Let's go for it," then rushed towards the monster. At this moment, Song Ren's head was also not committing a faux pas. What left them both in despair was, the monster hasn't even shed a bit of skin despite breaking the shovel in two. But the monster sensed someone attacking him. He suddenly threw the public property in his hand away, looking at the fallen Gong Yu on the ground. Lai Zhangping's two companions couldn't help but feel worried for him. But who would have known that in just a moment of distraction, the monster had unknowingly stood in front of them. Then, without waiting for them to take any action, the monster slapped them both away with a huge blow. Then the monster let out another roar and charged at them. By this time, suddenly a gunshot rang out behind the monster. The gunfire immediately attracted the monster's attention. Lai Zhangping, who fell to the ground, hurriedly picked up the broken wooden stick. After standing up, I stabbed straight into the monster's eye. The monster couldn't dodge in time and got one I stabbed out. Little did they know this would completely infuriate him. He shouted loudly and pounced towards Lai Zhangping. Just when Lai Zhangping thought he was surely doomed, 2 gunshots rang out behind the monster. The monster seemed particularly afraid of this sound. So, turning around without a care, they hurried into the darkness. At that moment, a group of talents arrived behind them. It turns out that a friend called in the local funeral service. After realizing the danger has passed, Lai Zhangping and Song Rentu immediately felt darkness before their eyes and fainted. When Lai Zhangping woke up again, realizing that I was already lying in the tent, and that friend who was captured by the monster, it's just a case of being overly frightened and there is no danger to life. A few days later, Lai Zhangping heard that another section of the road had also experienced a monster attack, and 3 people died. Later, I heard that the monster was killed by the army, but these are just hearsay. He has never seen it with his own eyes. Chapter 75. Don't take things without permission. Never wear clothes picked up from the roadside, because you don't know whether it's meant for people to wear. However, when I saw this suit, I was drawn to it at first glance. I couldn't help but put it on. I didn't expect it to fit so well, and the orange is very fresh as well. It seems the owner hasn't worn it many times. Just when I was admiring myself in the mirror, suddenly there was a rapid knocking at the door. I suspiciously leaned out from under the brim of my hat to take a look. At the door stood a man around 30 years old. I thought it was the property staff, so I opened the door. At the moment the door could be opened, a chilling gust suddenly condensed. It sent a shiver down my spine. The corridor was now inexplicably empty. That person just vanished inexplicably. But I didn't think much about it either. Thought he knocked on the wrong door. Then, in confusion, he closed the door. Continue admiring this handsome suit in front of the mirror. Suddenly, in the reflection of the mirror, I saw a dark figure standing at the door, and he seems to be the one who knocked on the door a moment ago. I don't know how he got in. Startled, he quickly turned to look back. But in the end, there was still no sign of anyone. Did I see it wrong myself? However, when I turned to look at the mirror again, but then I saw that person in the mirror. I was stunned at that moment. Why can that person only be seen in the mirror? Could it be that I've encountered a ghost? After much thought, in the end, I believe it must be related to this piece of clothing. After I rummaged through my clothes, sure enough, a savings book was found. Upon opening it, I found there were actually tens of thousands of dollars inside. And at that moment I unexpectedly saw that person again. He seemed to be anxiously looking at the savings book in my hand. I think he must have come for this. So they decided to find a way to return the item. Then I returned to that intersection with the suitcase. Sure enough, a woman was anxiously looking around. It seems like they are looking for something. Only after asking did I find out. This is indeed the box he lost. And I also heard from his mouth